The country life, a way of living centuries old, that's grown and developed massively over time. The real eat fresh. But before your food gets to your plate, it first has a heartbeat. In the city, people worry about missing their bus or train. Their lives are controlled by crosswalk signs and the people in front of them. The only thing they need to worry about is the wrong coffee order and hope their ice cream doesn't melt on the ride home. But in the country, they worry about sick animals, feeding and making sure their animals have clean bedding, identifying animals, orphaned babies, moving animals around, and required tasks like shearing and castration.
So my name's Michelle Ferraro. Everybody calls me Mish. My avocation is farming, raising sustainable sheep, and working very closely with animals and the land. And I think I look much more historically. I'm not as educated in soil practices and things like that, but I tend to try to look at what old farmers did successfully. Yeah, they did a lot of unsuccessful things. They weren't right on everything, but they utilized the land well. What I was trying to study was how we could have water for ourselves, because it's very useful on a farm, and how we could leave some water for the animals. All right, so this is a man-made pond. It's controlled by a weir system, and we leave it the same unless it's going to flood, and then we let out more water. And because it's moving water, it becomes an important source of livestock water. So this is the winter grazing, because in farming, no matter who you are, you always want things to be as simple as possible. So the fact that I can keep the stock here through most of the winter, and then in the really cold, hard freezes of February, I bring them further in close to the barn, and there's an automatic waterer that's heated. But otherwise, they're on a natural source of water, and I don't have to maintain anything.
My name is Sarah Ulrichsen. I grew up in Warren, Connecticut. So growing up in rural New England has really affected me as a person, just because I wasn't exposed to as many friends. Just because of where I live, there's really no one else out here. So what friends I did make are very special to me. My family.
So my name is Mark Sniffen. I grew up on a farm where we raised beef cows, chickens, and pigs. So what really sets living in the country apart from living in the city is you don't have that hustle bustle in New York City. Everyone's pretty laid back. Growing up on a farm compared to growing up in the city, you definitely have a more sense of responsibility, since you have to wake up every morning regardless if you don't feel like it, or if you're sick, you have to go out and feed the animals.
Thankfully, some animals can feed themselves, but this makes them more prone to predators. Some farmers like Mish have furry friends that help out.
Yeah, big hound. Yeah. So these guys are actively keeping the eagles away and the coyotes. Not the cold that bothers them. It's the heat. So they need more shelter, which is just the shade of the trees. But those dogs, they want to be with their sheep. They don't want to be inside. The interesting thing is they only bark when there is something afoot. And so if they're barking, I kind of go, what's going on? They don't just bark for no reason. And so at night, before we can ever even hear the coyotes, the guard dogs will start barking, and then you can kind of hear them, the coyote packs coming in. And they will bark back and, bark at the coyotes. I don't think the coyotes are barking at them. They're hunting, doing their thing. But then it's kind of like saying, okay, this is ours and don't come near. The sustainability in using animals in that way is really important for the public to understand what you're doing. And when the public sees a dog that's outside in the snow and they try to complain about that, they don't understand that dog's job is to stay with those sheep. It wants to do its job. They live to kind of fulfill their purpose, and they're got heavy coats. Like I said, our dogs are more worried about the heat they'll just dig a hole and get under a tree than they are about any cold and rain. And I think people think about cold and rain, and it's different.
So the perceived views on farming versus the reality, there's definitely a big difference.
In terms of the perceived view of farming and the reality of it, I feel like a lot of people think of farmers as just being like redneck hicks.
You can see all these different photos of all these pigs being all penned up. People saying, oh, there's so many pigs in this pen. But reality, when you go into a barn, they all come to the closest corner as close as they can to get to you because they want to see who it is. It's like your dogs when they greet you at home. So a lot of the pictures you may see when people are saying, oh, these animals are being abused or they're so tightly packed, the fact is they're not. They're just looking to see who it is and they want attention like your dog would.
But the public is not something most farmers stress about.
So I would say the most stressful time of year for farming is birthing season for like animals because you never know when they're going to go or if there's going to be complications or if everything's just going to be smooth and fine.
Sheep are incredibly insulated. You know, they have 4 or 5 inches of wool. I keep them out here until I shear them, and I shear them roughly a week before lambing. And the reason I shear them before lambing is then, because they are cold, they come into the barns. And they'll lamb in the barns. If I keep them in full fleece when they're lambing, they'll lamb outside. And then the lambs don't make it. So I just use that to make sure the sheep go into lamb. That's the other part of farming that people don't talk about is you get dead animals. You have ewes that die in labor or they get really sick. And in the winter I can't do it because it just draws in coyotes. But in the summer I put any dead carcass in that rock paddock, and then the only thing that can get it are the vultures. And the vultures have it gone in 3 days. They'll have an adult ewe just completely taken care of.
This sheep is experiencing trouble. It's a girl. While this time of year is stressful, there are other things people who live in the countryside look forward to.
So one of the big events during the year is the Big E, and this is around a 2.5 week long fair where people from all over New England, even New York, Pennsylvania, they all come up to show their animals. It could be all different species, all different breeds, and that's one big event everyone looks forward to. So fairs sculpt me as a person, definitely in the education part of it, because a lot of people don't know that much about animals you may have at the show, and you can educate them, talk to them about them, and there you can definitely defeat a lot of misconceptions that they may hear on the news or just what people put articles that really don't know that much about animals. So it's a great opportunity to educate the public.
So competing for me, I was big into the horse shows growing up. So really being able to put myself out there, compete, show the judge what I've got, and then also, like, yes, it's wonderful when you do well. However, it's also a learning experience when you don't do well. So I would often ask maybe my parents or a friend to videotape me while I was out in the ring doing my thing. And so then I can look back at my footage and just try and figure out what I did right, what I did wrong, what I can improve on. So it definitely helped me in that aspect. It's something that I use in everyday life, even after kind of slowing down on the horse show kind of thing.
So I would say one of my favorite memories of mine was definitely at the Big E when we were having the 4-H show, and you get to meet a lot of all these different people from around New England, and you can all learn from each other and help improve each other, like with your showmanship, and talk about different animals and like what you're going to breed this year. So I think that was just a really cool thing to do every year.
But some people like to keep things a little closer to home.
The Harwinton Fair is a fair that started, I think, somewhere around 150 years ago. It's an agricultural fair. It started out with vegetable and flower kind of contests, and then the farmers would bring their animals to be judged, and there would be ox pulling and horse pulling, as well as the sewing and needlework.
It's the best place to be in the fall because it's crisp. The air is crisp, and the smell of the hot dogs and hamburgers and pizza and the music from the Ferris wheel. It's an exciting place to be. You just love it. It gets in your blood after a while. You have to be there, even if it is 7 o'clock in the morning and it's really, really cold.
When you go to the Harwinton Fair, you just meet so many people that you know that you don't see every day. Maybe you see them once a year. And it's just such a fun place to be if you just walk the midway.
I used to sell tickets at the gate. That was fun. It really was fun. You would see so many people from town, and while you're really trying to get them, take their money and give them their tickets and get them through the gate, you're still talking, oh, hi, so-and-so, I haven't seen you since last fair. And it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
All the stuff that goes on, and it's like a big family reunion every year, and we still enjoy it.
I go to the fair every year because it's a tradition. You go there, sometimes it's hard work. It used to be. Now that I'm older, I go and watch other people doing all the work. And I just see so many people that have been friends for years. And I used to teach school. Some of my students are there, and I recognize them or they recognize me. It's just like a reunion kind of thing. So that's why I keep going back every year.
Living in the country or on a farm is not as glamorous as films make it seem. There are so many different problems that arise that others overlook. The days are filled with hard and stressful labor, and farmers make difficult life decisions, like when it finally comes time to send an animal to the butcher. A farmer's love is so strong, their needs come in last. They eat last. And when it's finally time to call it a night, they lay in bed and wait for the new dawn when the rooster crows.